tap into your most original thinking, organize your ideas, and create the opportunities to launch your creative work. Unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Unlocking Your World of Creativity. And we're so happy today to stamp our creative passport in Helsinki, Finland. It's our first time to Finland, and we're talking with our guest, Laurent Notin. Laurent, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me. It's your first time in Finland and you're talking to a French guy.
I know. I was going to try to get our world map out here because you were born in France, worked all in Southeast Asia for many, many years, and just in the last couple of years, moved to Finland. Let's talk first about when you talk to creative practitioners, entrepreneurs, people with big ideas. You often say that impact is the most frequently heard word. You know, we talk about purpose, find your why, but creative people like us seem to want to make impact with our work. What is your take? How do you translate that for us in terms of what impact might be?
It's funny what you're talking about that because I recorded an interview for my own podcast with an entrepreneur in Italy. He talked about impact. The way he described it was leaving a legacy behind him. But he was really talking about it's a sense of purpose. That's what it is. It's knowing that you are doing it for the right reason. And those reasons are everything except money. And usually it's about helping others. So that entrepreneur I talked to, this is what it was about. He works in a fintech, but for him, he's kind of on a mission to help people with a specific problem, to help them with the solution that he has. And that is more important than anything else. That is more important than money. And what I see many, many times is that entrepreneurs, well, I'm not sure we can call them entrepreneurs, but let's still call them entrepreneurs. They start a business for the wrong reason. And usually one of the wrong reasons is because they want to be rich. You know, they see what the media talk about, you know, they talk about those rich entrepreneurs who had it all, you know, that it was nothing. And now they're rich. But that's not the reality. I read somewhere that, I don't remember where it was, but the chance for a startup to become a unicorn is, what was it, 3 out of 5 million or something like that, like 0.0000009%. So you can't do it for the money, but it has to make sense. Simon Sinek talks about start with why. This is really what the entrepreneurs are talking about. It's doing it for the right reasons that make sense to them, because it will help them with everything that they do. It will help them make the right decisions. It will help them recruit the right people. It will help them work with the right clients, for instance. So it's really, really critical.
And it's so interesting that, you know, we have now become all aware that we should have our why. You know, we're aware that we should have this purpose other than money. But are we trying to copy somebody else's why? You know, it's like, well, because Simon Sinek said this, or because Brene Brown wrote this, you know, that there is a sense of ought to, like I ought to have this purpose, rather than looking inside and doing the hard work of finding what that drive should be for us personally.
Exactly. In my case, for instance, you know, before I became a coach, I always worked for others. And when I started, you know, thinking about it, like I thought, you know, it's time that I do something about it, that I became an entrepreneur myself, because I was surrounded by entrepreneurs. So I think they gave me the virus, plus I was reaching the age of 40 and I was like, damn, I need to do it now, because otherwise I would never do it. So it was really growing in me. But I really thought about, what is it that I really want to do? You know, where will I blossom? And so I really had to think about what makes me me. So I had to go back. I went back to all the experiences that I had at work. And then I realized that the thing that I really was enjoying the most, at that time I was running companies for others, was around people. It was around training them. It was around mentoring my staff. It was around coaching them and seeing them grow in their role. I've always enjoyed those aha moments that people have, where you can see the sparkles in their eyes. And I thought that's what I want to reproduce again and again and again. And that's why I became a coach. It just made sense for me.
Mm-hmm. And Laurent, first of all, I know our listeners have picked up on this, but I love when I hear a French-speaking person say the word entrepreneur. Since it is a French word, it has so much more passion and beauty behind it. Because I know growing up, in my generation anyway, nobody said, "Well, I can't wait to grow up and, be an entrepreneur." I mean,
Yes.
people might have said start my own business, or they might have said own the family business, but entrepreneur. And now, of course, there's degrees, there's books, there's a whole culture built around entrepreneurship. What do you think drives people to want to create something rather than just work for something in a job?
Yeah, what I see from my guests, and I've interviewed like more than 100 of them now, is three types of entrepreneurs. The first type is those who were born in an entrepreneurial family. It's part of them. It's already part of who they are. And usually they mention to me that they started as a kid. They were selling candies or whatever, but they started as a young age. And there's nothing else that they know. They've always done that. Then you have those people coming from the corporate world. And that's interesting because we're going back to purpose there. Because those people in the corporate world, all of them, they say more or less the same thing. They said, I was reaching a point where what I was doing didn't make sense. I had a boss. I was not, happy about the boss, or I didn't agree with the boss. And I didn't have the freedom of making the decision that I wanted to. So I really decided to do something else. And usually the entrepreneurship is not something that, they say, well, I'm going to become an entrepreneur right now. It's something that has nature in them until they thought it was the right time. And then you have the other group, which is a bit of everything. But you have to distinguish between entrepreneurs who do that because they need to survive. So for example, I live in Southeast Asia. There are a lot of entrepreneurs out there because there is no social security system, for instance. So when they don't make any money, well, they have no money, there's no food on the table. So a lot of families will build a mom and pop shop, right? And usually that is run by the women. But real entrepreneurship, what I'm talking about, is a calling. It's like you have it inside you. And it just makes sense. There's nothing else you would do, but sometimes it takes years before it blossoms. Like in my case, it took 18 years. In the case of those corporate people, it's also a long process.
Mm-hmm. And once we are the entrepreneur, it's not always smooth sailing.
It's never.
Exactly. You have this idea, I want to be my own boss. I had a mentor years ago that said, if I had to work for me, I'd quit. So we have to address some of our own obstacles, and you identified these as bottlenecks, but
yes.
There are symptoms of the slow growth, and you've even enumerated, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 bullets of what causes this stuckness. Give us an idea of why we are the bottleneck sometimes.
Imagine it's like in your life. We often are on our own way. Imagine this situation where you're a bit anxious and you start creating all these stories into your head, yes. Right? And then you start asking yourself very stupid questions, questions that don't really have any answer, but you keep on doing that, and somehow you're stuck there and you cannot seem to find a way out. Well,
have you ever noticed all those questions come in at an inconvenient time, like 2 or 3 in the morning?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's when you're the bottleneck. And that happens a lot with entrepreneurs too, because there is no difference between the funder and the company. The funder is the company. When the funder or the funders strive, the companies strive. When the funders have difficulties, they face challenges, then the company will face challenges too. The entrepreneur is the engine it's like the engine of a car, right? When the engine stops, the car stops. It's exactly the same. So when you become the bottleneck, when you're in a situation where you are stuck mentally, that's what I'm talking about. Well, then your car, the company, is stuck too. Now, how do you get there?
Yes.
That's a big question. It's so easy to get there. You get there all the time. You're there all the time, actually.
Well, exactly. Let's talk about your travels, because this is what
Yeah.
informs a lot of your experience. So take us through a little bit of your own creative journey here from France to Southeast
Hmm.
Asia and now to Finland. How has
Okay.
that gone for you?
Well, not so far, so good. I left France when I was 23, so that was like 23 years ago. And I left France and I went immediately to. I finished my military service because I was the last year of mandatory military service, and I ended up in a country called Laos, in Southeast Asia. It's a very landlocked country where I followed my partner at that time, and she found a job, and I didn't have anything. I just followed because I wanted to leave. We were supposed to stay there initially for 9 months. We spent 6.5 years. So I started working. This is where I started working for others. I started working for this small research agency, market research I'm talking about. And it was like a small agency, 10 staff. The founders, she was like French Laotian and he was French Cambodian. And a year after I started, they turned to me and they say, look, we're leaving to Cambodia. We need someone to run the business. And it's going to be you. Here are the keys, bye. Basically, I'm simplifying, but this is more or less how it happened. And this is how I started running companies for others. And this is how I started being in management and leadership. And I just loved it from day one. And then I was offered a job in Cambodia. Then we are back in 2006, which I took because after 7 years, 6.5 years in Laos, Laos is a small country, 5.5 million people. I was like turning into circles. My partner followed me. There I spent like 8 years working for a great local regional market research agency. I started as a research director, moved to the country director, and then move into the position of regional director, so covering the 3 countries. But so now we are to 2014. I resigned because I had difficulties with my shareholders who became the bottleneck in the business. Basically, I won't go through details. Move into an advertising agency, working for an advertising agency, which I managed from 2014, April 2014 to October 2017. And then October 2017, I started my own journey as a coach. But after 20 years, 20 years in Southeast Asia, I was tired. I don't know if you've been to Southeast Asia, but it's wild.
Yes.
I'm not talking Singapore. Okay, if you went to Singapore, you didn't go to Southeast Asia. You have to experience countries like Cambodia, Laos, the
Yes.
Philippines, Vietnam, even Thailand to some extent to understand what I mean. But it's a bit chaotic. But I loved it for nearly 20 years. I really enjoyed it. But after 20 years, I was tired of it. I needed a change. I needed people to stop at the traffic light.
Well, I was going to say, I have been to Hanoi and Da Nang and Ho Chi Minh City, and I thought the traffic and crossing the street was a metaphor for, the culture and the business and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you can cross the street, that's a good first step.
Yeah, it's actually a great metaphor. I used to use the same one with the same analogy with driving actually, but
well, I didn't even take that chance. Driving or not even a scooter.
Oh, I drove a scooter in not in Hanoi, but in Ho Chi Minh. I drove cars in Cambodia. But once you have driven over there, you can drive anywhere. Yes, driving in Finland is boring.
Yes. Well, and I was curious about, and you mentioned the French influence in these countries. How did you find that in terms of a working in a business relationship? Were you still the outsider, or because there was a sort of a French, I'll say, connection between the history and the cultures of the countries, was that different for you?
As the white people in Asia, in general, there's already like a high, you're respected. Doesn't mean that you are accepted, but you're respected. French people, a lot of the old generation in countries like Laos or Cambodia, even Vietnam to some extent, they still do speak French. French people are maybe a little bit more respected than other nationalities. But it didn't give me any advantages, being French. But you can still see the influence, of the French past in countries like Laos, Cambodia, although they are destroying more and more the old colonial houses, unfortunately. But nothing that I could use, because, to be honest, the young generation, what they're looking at is English.
Yes.
In Cambodia, every young person speaks English. They learn English and they use English to get out to the world. And Vietnam is following. Thailand also is following. So English is really something the young people, they want to strive for.
Yes.
French.
Well, there you go. Well, let's bring things up to date then in Helsinki for you. And Lauren, you're not going to be surprised, but I hear and connect with a lot of coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I put that in air quotes, and coaches and trainers and mentors and teachers. But what is it about coaching that we as entrepreneurs should think about? Why do we need this accountability, or why do we need this extra training? There's so many creative practitioners. I mean, we're educated. We know what the business is, and certainly we have a handle on the business. Why would we seek outside counsel like yourself?
Well, you mentioned the word accountability. That's clearly something that a coach can help with. It can help someone to be accountable for himself or herself.
Mm-hmm.
When you are at the top of the organization, who are you accountable to? Yourself, okay? Maybe you have a board of advisor. Maybe you have a mentor. Then you're accountable for them. That's the role of a coach,
mm-hmm.
to keep you accountable for yourself. Also, as an entrepreneur, you have to deal with so many things. You have to wear so many hats. There's so many things that you need to learn, from financial management to marketing to customer service to, production. If you work in the manufacturing, so many things that at the end of the day, what do you need to focus on? What matters the most? And there's a big risk, and that is one of the bottlenecks. As an entrepreneur, one of the big risks is that you get lost into details, because you're stuck into the day-to-day operations, right? And you forget to take a step back from it. Look at the big picture. Think, okay, this is what I need to do now. This is what I need to focus on right now, because this is what matters the most. That's where a coach can also help. I can help you take that step back and look at the picture. I always use the analogy with a wall. Imagine your head and your entire body is stuck against a wall. Now, if you turn your head left or right, what do you see? Nothing. You see like a plain straight line. You don't see any exits unless it is right next to you, right? So how do you you don't even know how high the wall is, because you can't see, because you don't know where the exits are and how far they are. You don't even know how long the wall is. So what do you need to do? You need to take a step, 2 or 3 steps backward, so you can analyze the situation from a different perspective. Well, that's what a coach does.
Yes.
Help you take those steps back.
And in a way, people wait until they are stuck, to think about a coach. But again, I had someone share with me the analogy. I mean, Serena Williams has a coach. She's a great tennis player, but she still has a coach. Somebody asked if the Rolling Stones still have to practice and rehearse before every concert, even though they played Start Me Up, a billion times over the years. And the answer is yes, of course. I mean, Tom Hanks as a director, so why do you feel that people sometimes wait, or do they engage you when they're kind of at the top of the game and want to maintain it?
No, usually it's more when they are facing an issue, they engage me, not when they are at the top of the game, because when they are top of the game, they are there, so they don't feel the need. Ego often gets on the way. I'm an entrepreneur. I have an ego. Okay, don't tell me what to do because I know.
Right, everything's going great.
Yes, complacency. Complacency is actually another bottleneck. But even when things are not going well, I believe entrepreneurs have a lot of difficulties to ask for help, because they think that help is not the right thing to do. It's going to devalue them. Okay, it's not. They shouldn't have to ask for help. Right.
good.
Okay.
So good.
So
Yeah.
of course you can do everything by yourself if you want to, but you can also turn to professionals who actually know what they're talking about so that you can strive. There is no shame in asking for help. Asking for help will actually help you get where you want to go.
So good. Well, my guest has been Laurent Notin from Helsinki, Finland. Laurent, before we close, I wanted
Yes.
to think about this one thought that you had, is that you were talking about a successful entrepreneur, one who is at the top of their game,
Yeah.
but still could be so lost in the details and like myopia here that they're not celebrating those successes. You saw that as a sign and a symptom that they're too stuck in the business, that they're not stopping to celebrate.
Yeah. I talked to one entrepreneur, one of my clients actually, he became a client. He was talking about, as cheesy as it sounds, he was talking about enjoying the journey and versus focusing on one peak after another. And that's the problem with being successful, is that you can first, what is success really? Okay. Don't measure success to what others do. Measure success to what you want success to be. So always ask yourself, what is success for you? That's the right question. But then, going from one peak to another is great, but what's the point? You go there, and then once you are at that peak, you go to the next peak, and you go to the next peak, and it never ends. So because it never ends, because anyway, entrepreneurship is a journey. You know when it starts, you never know when it's going to end. You better enjoy it on the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Take
the time to reflect, take the time to celebrate the wins, the failures, take the time to enjoy yourself, take the time to take care of yourself too.
So good. And Laurent, what's on your creative plate these days? As you're looking after other entrepreneurs, but you're running a business, and you're a creative practitioner in and of yourself. So what's on your laptop or desktop these days that you're working on?
Oh, so many things all the time. I have to make notes all the time. Like, is my website is my website okay? What should I do? What should I do, for my social media? But what is on my plate right now, which I want to focus on next, is my new ebook. I already have the title. You want it?
Yes.
The Good, the Bad, and the Reality. What does it take to be an entrepreneur?
I love it. There you go.
Now, when am I going to write it? I don't know yet.
Yes.
But hey, you have the title.
Yes. Well, the thing about podcasts, as you know, is you don't know if there's 5 people listening or 5,000 people listening at any given moment, right? But let's just say you have about 500 accountability partners who are going to respond to this podcast and say, hey, Laurent, where's that ebook? Let's get after it. So we're going to be your partner in the journey.
Exactly. That's a great way to be accountable for yourself. Announce it publicly.
There you go. Well, you just did. Well, listeners, my guest is Laurent Notin. He's been a terrific coach and a helpful partner to many entrepreneurs. And we've learned so much from your experience today. Appreciate it, Laurent.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Be sure to tell us how we can connect with you and learn more about your work and follow you.
Sure. You can always check out my website, laurentnotin.com. You can contact me by email at contact@laurentnotin.com or reach out on LinkedIn. Same, Laurent Notin. I reply to all emails and to all connections or messages on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put all those in the show notes so we can link them and we can spell your name correctly and we can find you and all the good stuff. So I've enjoyed my trip to Helsinki today. We'll have to make it real next time, not just virtual. And I'm sure you have a great coffee shop, or even better, a great pub where we could meet up and share more stories.
Yes, and sauna, remember, sauna.
Sauna.
Come enjoy a sauna, like the real feel, the ultimate Finnish experience, sauna.
Very good. Well, listeners, join me again as we continue our creative travels. We've exceeded 100,000 downloads. We're well into our 200th episode and beyond. So continue traveling with us as we talk to creative practitioners around the world about how they get inspired and how they organize ideas, and most of all, how they gain the confidence and the connections to launch their work out into the world. So until next time, I'm Mark Stinson, and we've been unlocking your world of creativity. See you next time.
Unlocking Your World of Creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This program was produced by BSB Media, creators of IntelliKey Leadership Stories, Unlocking Your World of Creativity, and thepeaceroom.love. Our podcast is supported by Adobe and the Adobe Creative Cloud, the world's best creative app and services, so you can make almost anything you can imagine wherever you're inspired. We use Adobe to help make this podcast using Audition, InDesign, and more. So join the creative community with the Adobe Creative Cloud, and let's make something better, unlocking your world of creativity.